well, just basking in the afterglow of one of the great races of the modern era. And that and so much more to come here on Luck on Sunday through the next 2.5 hours. Here's what you can enjoy. And right out of the blocks, first up, a man who can look forward to the Battash hat-trick in the King George at Goodwood next week. That's Jim Crowley, the champion jockey of 2016, joining me live in the studio. Jim rode Salomon to finish fourth in the other King George, the King George, yesterday's King George, the epic, the all-time classic, the victory of Enable over Crystal Ocean. So many reflections on one of the best races in a generation, including with Enable's trainer, John Gosden, who joins us on the phone a little later. Jim can look forward to riding this horse in future, El Arkam, who is right back on track. It was Super Sub Dane O'Neill who rode yesterday as he strode to victory in the York Stakes on the Knavesmire. For Mark Johnston, who is just continuing apace to train winner after winner after winner. Glorious Goodwood very nearly upon us, and the Magnolia Cup has become a great feature of this week, raising an awful lot of money for charity. And one of this year's participants, the Racing Post's Kitty Trice, will join us live in the studio to talk about her training for this event. And our feature guest this week is a man who was champion trainer in 2014, just a year after taking over from his illustrious father. He is Richard Hannon Jr., the fastest man ever to train 1,000 winners. What a day it was yesterday. Wherever you happen to be in the country, it was a spellbinding race and so much to look forward to. But delighted to introduce my first guest this morning, a man who rode over 100 winners as national hunt jockey, a sphere in which he was doing extremely nicely, thank you. But he switched his attention to the flat and he never looked back. He rode a first Group 1 winner in 2009, is it really 10 years ago, that Lord Shannakill for Carl Burke won the Prix Jean Prat, and then his career really took off. Somebody then figured out that this was a man who could be champion jockey quite feasibly. He set about that task with gusto and he achieved this feat in 2016, after which he was made first jockey to shake Hamdan Al Maktoum, one of the prize jobs in the weighing room. He is now firmly established among the top echelons of riders in the country. He is, of course, Jim Crowley. Jim, good morning.
Morning.
Welcome to the Luck on Sunday studio. It's been a pretty remarkable career to date, and I don't think we're even halfway there, are we?
I hope not. I hope there's plenty more to come.
And you're now firmly established as a big race rider, a big day rider. You came off the back of probably a frustrating day for you yesterday at Ascot, but it must have been an amazing race to be a part of.
It was fantastic. You know, the atmosphere, you know, when Enable came back in, it was just unbelievable. And even the reception Crystal Ocean got, and walking back in, even Salomon, all the place horses were getting clapped walking back in. It was just a remarkable race to ride in.
And there are some horses that are just a little bit special, and I know we're going to spend quite a bit of this programme debating what she did or didn't achieve yesterday, but it is that emotional impact is quite hard to put numbers on, isn't it? It's quite hard to sort of quantify, really. Yeah,
I mean, she is as good as filly mare I've ever seen. I've saw the back of her before with Ulysses in the King George 2 years ago, and she's very special, you know, and we've been very lucky to see her. And you know, obviously Prince Khalid's had Frankel, and you know, in an era we've been very lucky with some superstars.
You mentioned Ulysses. You developed a fantastic rapport with him a couple of seasons ago. Would he be the best middle distance horse that you've ridden? Yeah,
for sure. I think when he won the Juddmonte that day, he was special. You know, he had Churchill and everybody was off the bride, and he was just absolutely cantering. He was a class act. You know, and he was a bit unfortunate that when he met Enable, it was soft ground, and the weight for age was such a big disadvantage for him. I'm not saying he would have beat her, but certainly it was on her terms. But yes, and it was. He was a super horse. Yeah, he might have put it up to her like Crystal Ocean was able to do yesterday, but I think everyone was really captivated by it. And it's interesting to know what implications it could have for the sport as a whole, I suppose, for the rest of this season when she turns up again and again, and who knows, maybe even next year. Yeah, well, I'm not sure. This obviously the Arc is their goal now. Whether it should go to York or not, I don't know, but you know, just like I said, enjoy her while you can. And for you to be a regular part of all these big race days now, do you still count yourself
fortunate, or do you now sort of take it as read that that's going to be the case?
No, I think you've got to, I wouldn't say I'm fortunate that I'm in this position to ride in good races, and I think whenever you get an opportunity to try and grab it and take it with both hands, really. But I certainly don't rest on my laurels, and good rides are hard to pick up, especially spare rides in those big races.
And you were part of that raft of national hunt jockeys who switched to the flat, and it's gone extremely well for an awful lot. PJ McDonald being the obvious other example at the moment, but Graham Lee's done it very successfully. You've done it more successfully than anybody else. When you did it, however, it wasn't considered a fashionable thing to do. It was slightly off the wall. What made you do it?
Do you know what? It was just my sister-in-law, Amanda Perrett. I used to ride out there in the summer, and I remember she said to me, could you ride a few maidens for me? And that was it. I started riding in a few maidens, and I think Alan Monroe got injured one year, and Rod Millman then approached me and asked me to ride some of his horses, and I went from having being not that many horses to ride jumping to having access to riding over 100 horses on the flat. So it was a bit of a no-brainer. I had to make a decision whether I was going to be a dual-purpose jockey or go back jumping, and I was very lucky that in my first year I think I rode a group winner for Patrick Chammings, the Brigadier Gerard Stakes, and then it was just a no-brainer really after that. I just set my stall out to go full on the flat.
And I know when Graham Lee's interviewed, for example, he always says, I could ride as many of these winners as you want, group winners or whatever, but I'll never get the same buzz as I did when I was in the weighing room at Cheltenham or whatever. Do you understand what he means by that? Yeah,
I do. I mean, it is a different buzz when you're riding jumping. When you get into ride. I was lucky enough to ride in like a Grand Steep de Paris and races like that, and that is just it's brilliant. It's a real buzz. The only thing that can sort of compete near that is riding it somewhere like a Breeders' Cup or Chartin or something like that. That's when you walk out onto the track and you get a bit of a buzz, yeah.
And why did you go down the jumping route in the first place? Was it because that was your background, essentially?
Yeah, my parents trained point-to-pointers when I was younger, and I was probably a bit too heavy for the flat. I was around just over 9 stone when I was sort of 16 or 17 years old, and I just wanted to be a jump jockey. That's all I ever wanted to be, and hence that's why I went down that route.
Were you a thrill seeker as a child, or as a teenager?
Yeah, no, I did, and that's, I remember I used to go to the point-to-points and used to go and stand down by the last fence and watch the jockeys falling off, and used to think that was just like, they were just the best thing ever. And I wanted to be like that, and growing up, Richard Dunwoody and people like that were my idols.
Because you were attracted to the danger?
Yeah, I think so. I always grew up hunting and things like that, and that's what I wanted to be, jump jockey.
I remember, we've talked about this a few times, but I remember when we filmed the car racing down at Goodwood a few years ago, and there was a whole team of you driving, and you at the time were probably the least high profile jockey, because there was Ryan and Frankie Dettori and what have you, and you were winning by miles. I've never seen anyone so plugged in to such a hairy pursuit as you were that day. It was like complete
quite competitive.
Yes.
Anything like that. Once I set my mind on doing something, I'm a great believer in, if you think you can do something, you will. And it's like when I went for the Jockeys Championship, I convinced myself I was going to do it. And I think once you get in that frame of mind, I think it's a big help.
And then you just can't see any outside interference. All you're doing is focused on that prize.
That's right. I mean, I remember Kieran Fallon saying, riding in races, 80% of it's in the mind, and I think if you really believe you can do something, I think you'll achieve it, definitely.
And so when you were in that championship season in 2016, and you had a seriously tenacious competitor against you in Sylvester, who'd already won the Jockeys Championship and is absolutely brilliant at amassing winners, was there ever a moment that you didn't think it would happen?
No. I remember going into Goodwood, I was 16 or 17 winners behind. And we just got on a roll, and it was a remarkable month. I think it was September. We had like 46 winners, and it was just eat, sleep, race, repeat. And I'd convinced myself I was going to do it. I could just imagine myself sort of holding the trophy and it was bizarre really, and how it worked out.
46 winners in a month was more winners in a month than any other jockey has achieved ever before or since. I mean, that is quite remarkable. You must have been exhausted, or were you not?
I was exhausted. I remember going to Redcar the day before Ascot. I didn't have to go, but I was already committed to rides, and I went. And I slept all the way there, and I slept all the way home. I was literally absolutely exhausted. And I think, you know, we talk about the Jockeys' Championship nowadays, and I don't think people realise the amount of work that has to go in to win it. So the likes of Ryan and Frankie, and although people would love to see them going for the Jockeys' title, there's so much racing now. It just takes such a toll on you.
Even with the concertinaed season and the championship season as it's structured now?
Definitely. I think obviously because it's so concertinaed now that you try and cram more into it, and like, we can only ride at 9 meetings a week, but that's still a fair amount. I mean, in the old days you could do 2 meetings every day, but we can only do 2 night meetings now. But yeah, it certainly took a toll on me. The next season I knew I'd done it.
Did it give you so we're just seeing you receiving your trophy now, and you received it from Nick Skelton, who'd won the Olympic medal. Did you feel the sense of satisfaction that you wanted to feel having won it?
Huge amount. I mean, it's. I never thought I'd be champion jockey on the flat. You know, when you set out as a jump jockey, I thought, you know, you had great aspirations of being a champion over jumps, but I felt that I'd achieved something worthwhile with my career. It was a great fulfillment, and it gave me a lot of confidence, and you know, I loved every minute of it. I'd love to do it again. You know, it's a great buzz, something I really enjoyed doing.
And for your children, just about old enough to really appreciate it as well, the girls.
Yeah, they did. They used to look at the newspaper every day, and you know, it was the press made a real good thing of it. Obviously, Sylvester was riding stacks of winners as well, and we went toe to toe, and they enjoyed it as well, and they took a real interest in it.
So you talk about your determination, and clearly the need to have that mental strength in order to succeed in a challenge like that. Do you think your route to where you got helped you in a sense that it wasn't an overnight success? You didn't just get it handed to you on a plate.
I think so. I think. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I'd have gone straight to the flat when I was 17 or 18. But I think, you know, your life takes unusual paths, and I'm so glad mine went down the jumping route first. And I appreciate everything I have now, you know, on the flat, and try not to get too cocky or big-headed or anything like that, and just appreciate what I've got. I've made some great friends along the way jumping, and I enjoyed every minute of it. And
you had some hard taskmasters as well in Harvey and Sue Smith. But I'm imagining, so Harvey sat in that chair memorably, and I'd imagine there could be no finer place to learn.
I loved it. I remember I went down there from Sussex, and I drove up to Harvey Smith. I drove past it 3 times. I didn't think it was a racing yard. And I was there for 3-4 years with Harvey, and I can honestly say I've never come across a more gifted horseman in my life, and I never will do. You know, he used to get very ordinary horses and make something of them, and yeah, I learned a hell of a lot there. Some great jockeys there at the time. It was good fun as well, and a bit rough and ready, but yeah, it was a wonderful time.
Who were you with? Who were your contemporaries around that time?
There was Dominic Ellsworth was there. Seamus Durack was obviously riding a lot of them. Towards the end, Warren Marston used to come in quite a lot. Paddy Aspel, Derek O'Connor, the Irish champion point-to-point rider, he was there for a season.
Yeah, they call him an amateur, but...
in name, he was a brilliant rider. So there was always plenty of jockeys there, and it was just great fun.
What did he teach you? Because sometimes those really gifted people, they can't be good teachers because they can't really explain why they're so good. Could he teach you? Yeah,
well, I remember one thing he did say to me, and I look back on it now, when I was doing really well as a conditioner and an amateur, and he used to say to me, you know, you're taking too many rides. And I had an agent at the time, and obviously I was easy to sell, and I would just be riding everything. Harvey would say, no, you're better off, don't ride that, son, don't ride that. And next thing you're walking around with a broken collarbone, and you think, yeah, maybe he was quite right. He used to try and get me to ride quite long, which obviously being small, we sort of didn't agree on all the time. But he was just, you know, fascinating to work for, and the schooling mornings there were fantastic, absolutely brilliant.
Why so?
They weren't, you know, we had a line of sort of doors and tyres, and we didn't have a flash schooling ground. I remember Charlie Brooks came up one morning. He had a difficult horse called Misty Class, and he couldn't do anything with him. Harvey just looked at me and said, "Here, walk to those set of tyres and 2 strides out, straight up and over." And that's how we used to school him. We used to school him backwards over the jumps. It's just phenomenal, really.
I'm just trying to work that out. So you jumped like a steeplechase fence the wrong way around?
Yeah, definitely. You know, we had our, I think our open ditch was a set of lorry tyres with oil drums in front. It was, put it this way, they didn't touch them, and if they did, they only did it once.
So you knew when you turned up and people would say, "Oh, those Grand National fences are a bit," they'd walk in the park compared to what you were jumping at home.
They were well schooled there, absolutely well schooled, and sort of in the old days of jump trainers, we probably had 3 or 4 chase hurdles, and we had a line of about 10 in a row, and they were about 6-7 strides apart, and then we'd turn around and jump them back down again.
Amazing. So what fascinates me is that you go from that nearly 20 odd years ago now to riding the fastest horse in the world, just about, in Battaash. And if there were 4.5 furlong races, this horse would be talked about as one of the best that's ever lived. He probably is one of the best that's ever been over 5 when he gets it right, like he tends to at Goodwood. It's formality this week, isn't it?
I hope so, yeah. He should be. He loves the place. He's a very intelligent horse. I don't go and ride him out very often, thank God. But he's a very intelligent horse, and he's getting better. He's behaved impeccably well this year. When I first started riding him, he was hot. But he's got better, so much better.
Is he one of those sort of horses that could have actually just ended up being a certifiable lunatic if he'd not been taken the right way?
Oh, for sure. I mean, he was gelded early on. He misbehaved quite badly at Ascot one day, and that was it. They just decided to geld him, and ever since then he's just got better and better and better. But he's not easy. He's not. He wants to do everything at 100 mile an hour. You know, if you make the running, he just wants to go that stride faster than you do all the time. And this year we've been able to drop in a little bit. Obviously, I dropped him in at Haydock, but even then, he never really fully relaxes for you.
Because there's a school of thought that says if he's got that much speed, can you not just use his natural assets, go flat out from the gate? And see what happens.
I think you probably could on an easy track, definitely. Yeah, and I think the best part of his race is between the 3 and the 2, where other horses are, you know, they're all basically off the bridle and he's still cantering. I thought the race when he won the Prix de l'Abbé in 2017, he was just unbelievable. I think he won by 6 lengths. He had about 5 Group 1 winners behind him. You know, he's a hugely talented horse, and hopefully we'll see plenty more of him.
When you made that transition, was split-second decision-making something that came quite naturally to you? Was it something you had to adjust to?
I had to adjust to. I remember I've always been quite up on the form, and I used to sort of write notes, and the lads used to take the mick out of me, and I used to go through all the form, try and work it out, and try and have plan A, plan B, and plan C in a race. And I think it's over time you get used to the speed of a race and how fast you're going, and it is different from jumping. And it took me, it certainly took me a season to get it half right, I think.
Was there a moment in the sort of second phase of your career, if you like, where you thought, yeah, I belong here, I'm good here?
I think obviously that first year I switched to the flat, and we started having some big winners. We won a Chester Cup and things like that, and I thought, you know, this is. I only switched to try and gain some experience, really. I wasn't sure if I wanted to carry on being a jump jockey. I had one eye on maybe being a trainer or something, and I just thought, you know what, why don't I try a few years on the flat or a year on the flat and just get some experience and just find out what it's like. I never set out to make a career of it on the flat. It just sort of happened, really.
You had a spell. I suppose this is one of your big breaks, riding for Rafe Beckett, who was on this programme. He talked quite lengthily about your relationship together as jockey and trainer, and I think he was attributing your parting of ways to essentially what he thought was your sort of single-mindedness and that determination you were talking about. But before, how was your time as a stable jockey there?
It was good. I really enjoyed riding for Rafe. He was a brilliant trainer, and he is a good trainer. We were a great team. I think I was there for four, maybe 5 seasons. Rode a lot of winners for him. I don't think in all those time we never once had a disagreement over a race, and we were a good team. But I just felt at the time it was difficult for me. I was retained without being retained, if that makes sense. And
which is common to a lot of jockeys now, isn't it?
Yeah, and at the time Rafe is such a good trainer that he doesn't leave a lot to chance, and sometimes at the last minute I'd be getting switched at the last minute and things like that, and I was upsetting a few other trainers as well at the same time, and all my eggs were in one basket, and I just fancied a change, to be honest. And when I left, I probably didn't do it on the right way, I don't know, but I didn't try and fall out with anybody. I offered to carry on riding for them, but I think Rafe just wanted a clean break, and it just worked out that way. But we have a laugh now, and funny enough, I went to Epsom the other day. It's quite a good story, and I came out and I tried to get in my car, and I was pressing the button. I thought, oh, the key fob's not working. So I sat there and I rang my sister-in-law and I said, oh, can you come back and collect me? My car, I can't get into my car. And then he came walking over to me, smiling. He says, why are you trying to get in my car? I was parked 3 down and we had the exact same cars, which is quite funny.
Thought you might get at least one ride off him. So, I mean, you touched on an interesting point there, for all we're laughing about it now, which is that as a rider, if you haven't got a retain, you're a small business, essentially. You're running a small business, and you are the product that you're selling. And I guess at some point, you have to be, if not cutthroat, at least reasonably ruthless in order to get on.
Oh yeah, I think you've got to be reasonably ruthless in any sport. But I think one thing I will say, Rafe was unbelievably loyal to me when I was there. He was very good. When I remember, I picked the wrong one in the Oaks one year. I rode the favourite, and the 16-1 shot came and beat me.
You could hardly have picked talent over Secret Gesture, could you?
Yeah, it was a frustrating day that day. But then the next time she ran, and I rode her in the Ledger afterwards. He was an unbelievable loyal trainer to ride for. But yeah, as you said, it's as a freelance jockey, there are a lot of opportunities nowadays. There's so many yards with, say, 80 to 100 horses who don't have a jockey, that as a freelance, certainly going for the Jockeys Championship, it's a big plus if you are freelance.
Yeah. So you look on this Jockeys Championship now and you see, I was going to say 2.5 contenders who are there at the moment. So Danny Tudhope's had this amazing spell, a bit like your golden spell, really, isn't it? It's like that 3 years on. Oisin Murphy, who everyone thought was going to win 2 months ago, and Sylvester, who everyone thought was a certainty 4 months ago.
Yeah.
How's it going to shake down?
I think it's a 2-horse race. You can't rule Sylvester out completely, but I think on the winners, he's a good bit of working to do to catch up with them. I wouldn't like to call it. They're both driven. I think Danny Tudhope, they're both very good riders. Obviously, riding in the north, I think he's going to get a lot of support of the northern trainers. Oisin rides for lots of people. I don't think there'll be a lot on it. I can't see there being more than 10 winners in it at the end of the season. I think
it could be a real hammer and tongs job.
I think it could go either way. It's whoever really wants it more, I think.
And who do you think does want it more?
I think they both want it, but I think Danny Tudhope, at that stage of his career, he'll be with the mindset, I might not get another chance, and I don't know, it might go his way.
And immediately after you'd won, you get one of the sort of, it's like a politician getting one of the great offices of state. You get one of the great jobs in the sport as a retained rider to shake hand down. You know you are going to drop on good horses. Even if there's a lean season, you're going to get on some good ones the next time. How are you enjoying that role?
I love it. I mean, it took a bit of a while to start with. There's so many horses to get your head around. Their names all sound very similar, and I've got 13 different trainers to keep happy, but you know, I enjoy it. It's a challenge that I enjoy. It was a bit logistically, it was a bit difficult to start with because obviously I live down in Sussex.
Yeah.
But Richard Hills has been a big help. Obviously, he lives in Newmarket and he likes to ride a lot of the work up there, which helps me. If there's a good horse or there's something worth riding, I'll come up and stay overnight in Newmarket. Owen Burrows is quite local to me. Richard Hannon's, Charlie Hills they're all sort of within an hour and a half from me. So I tend to do the Lambourne sort of yards a bit more than I would the Newmarket. But no, I love it, and you know, like I said, the chances you're going to get on good horses. Even if you have a quiet season, they'll come round again, like they do with an operation that big.
And getting to know all those different trainers on a slightly more personal basis must have been fascinating. You already had a bit of a relationship with Sir Michael Stoute, but John Gosden and all the other big trainers that Sheikh Hamdan uses.
It's brilliant because everybody wants their horses ridden in a certain way as well. Not everybody's the same. It's something that, you know, you have to learn to how, like I said, how everybody wants their horses ridden. Sheikh Hamdan normally likes his horses ridden forward in a race, and it's, you know, you have to bear that in mind, which is quite easy when you ride for Mark Johnson. They always don't push, don't pull. But no, it's something I really enjoy, and like I said, so far I've sat on some nice horses. We haven't quite come across another Togruta yet. Hopefully there'll be one to come. Maybe one of her offspring. Oh yeah, let's hope so.
You never know. Well, you've got Battaash to keep you going, to keep you warm in the meantime. It's not too bad, and possibly Elikam as well.
Yeah.
We'll talk about him in a minute. But for the moment, Jim Crowley, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jim is going to stay with us for the remainder of the programme, and after this break, he will be joined by the Racing Post senior writer, Lee Mottersett.
Luck on Sunday, proudly sponsored by Al Basti Equiworld Dubai.
The Racing TV website has all the exclusive racing content you love from our channel and so much more. RacingTV.com is a true one-stop shop for all racing fans, featuring the latest race cards, videos and breaking news, all on one easy-to-use site. You'll never miss a race on RacingTV.com. Watch the main channel or create your own viewing experience by watching up to 4 of our dedicated live racecourse feeds at once on Racing TV Extra. If you can't watch the action live, our race replays will be online within minutes of the finish. We know how important race cards are. That's why we've teamed up with Timeform to offer in-depth and easy-to-digest cards with Timeform ratings and odds comparison powered by OddsChecker. Our fast results service from courses around the world will keep you up to date with all the latest racing results. If you rate a horse you've seen, you can add it to the industry-leading Racing TV tracker. Then you'll be notified the next time it's entered for a race and due to run, so you'll never need to miss the price again. And there's more. RacingTV.com provides a daily tipping service from our betting experts, which are certainly worth looking out for. You can even apply for your next club day via RacingTV.com. Simply head to the club day page, select the club day you'd like to attend, and you'll be on course before you know it. With these features and so much more, the Racing TV website is your ultimate online hub for horse racing. Start making the most of your membership now at RacingTV.com on your desktop, mobile or tablet.
At every moment on my journey, there has only been one focus. Winning. Last year was great to spur me on.
And the line really roars today.
But now the hunger grows inside. To win more.
Door hard, and the Tin Man has his day in the sun at Haydock.
And more. And more. I look around at the champions and champions to be.
These will fight it out.
And they inspire me.
And they're on their way.
To be a champion, you have to work harder than everyone else.
Lightning Spear and Ashim Murphy get through and have won.
The hunger turning to fire.
They're off.
Fueling me to work harder.
Racing up the wheel towards the line. Roaring on near side. The Lion roars a stand up.
And to go faster.
She's gonna win the Kipco 1000 Guinness.
be disciplined.
They're practically together now. They fight tooth and nail.
To be patient.
As we now run inside the last furlong, he's finishing strongly.
To be a champion.
Here comes the winning line.
Kipco British Champion Series, showcasing the finest flat racing.
When every warm smile reminds you why you come back summer after summer, year after year. When your horse is thundering to the line, only a nose in front, it's enough to make your hair stand on end. Celebrating 150 years of the Galway Races Summer Festival. Join us from July 29th to August 4th.
Luck on Sunday, proudly sponsored by Al Basti Equiworld Dubai.
Welcome back. You're watching Luck on Sunday. I'm delighted to say that Jim Crowley remains with me, the man who has seen the back of Enable in 2 King Georges, first on Ulysses and yesterday on Sallowan, and joined by senior writer for the Racing Post, Lee Mottershead, a regular here on Luck on Sunday. But I doubt you've ever been in here buoyed by such a sort of giddy sense of delight at what you've just seen.
Yeah, it was sensational.
And I'm not talking about the pimped up pastries today.
No, yeah, they're very pimped, sort of chocolate brownie type creations there. Yeah, it was sensational. It was one of those races where you do walk away from the grandstand with a real sense of knowing that you've seen something special, and knowing that you've seen something that just makes you feel better about everything, really. For me, it was comparable to watching Sprinter Sacra's second champion chase, something that really just gives you a feel-good factor that stays with you for the rest of the day. And I thought it was a sensational horse race. I thought from start to finish it was utterly absorbing. From those early stages that I thought had echoes of Grundy Bustino, with the pacemakers really taking on from the start, with Shamie Heffernan very cleverly trying to seem to keep Frankie wide on the track, Frankie then having to adjust his game plan through the race, and then down the home straight, that pulsating, gripping battle between those two horses. 2 out, it looked like Enable was going to go clear. Then Crystal Ocean rallied at the furlong pole. You couldn't work out who was going to win. And both horses giving their all, really trying their best. It was just a fantastic spectacle.
Now, you were so excited by this.
I was. I don't deny it.
That you took to Twitter.
I did.
And you tweeted thus.
Yeah, I did.
It's coming. It is coming.
It's worth it when it comes.
Here we go. Yep. So many echoes of Grundy Bustino, but surely even better.
Yeah, now the surely even better.
This is a...
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It did reel a few. I mean, I think the problem is...
Real Jim McGrath in within about 2 minutes.
We had a what with about 3 A's in there. I think it's impossible to say surely even better. That was me on a high. But I think it was. I think it did have those echoes because of the pace-making angle, because of the frenetic early pace, and because of that home straight duel. And there's just part of me that thinks, although I was only about 3 weeks old for Grundy Bustino, so the extent of live insight I can offer from those days is minimal.
But we've all seen
it, we've all read about it, and I just wonder if there's part of me that thinks maybe we cling on to that 1975 King George to an extent that maybe isn't warranted, and that to say what we had yesterday was just as good or even better isn't actually sacrilege. It's a perfectly fair statement.
The thing that struck me, thinking about the comparison between the two races, Jim, was that then it seems, looking on, and I think we're roughly the same vintage, but then in the Grundy Bustino time, those pacemakers were sacrificial lambs. And those horses were there to win on that day, and that's all that mattered. Whereas you fancy now people are just a bit more circumspect about the way they campaign their horses. Yes, the day matters, but we've all become a bit more efficient about the way we train or race horses, haven't we?
For sure. I mean, obviously, I remember watching the race on YouTube, and I just couldn't believe the pace in Grundy Bustino's King George that day, and I was just like, it's crazy. Like say nowadays they ride a bit more of a race, and obviously John Gosden will be thinking about the Arc with this filling. What I found fascinating yesterday was Frankie only used his stick once on her yesterday. It was a brilliant ride by Frankie Dettori, because he was, you know, he didn't go for everything on her. And James Doyle on Crystal Ocean as well, he used the whip very sparingly as well. So it was a great race to watch. It was a great race to be a part of. I managed to get onto the back of Enable turning in, and I didn't think I was going to win, but I thought I'm following the right one, and hopefully she can tow me. And next thing, she just gone. Unbelievable.
So that even took you by surprise. Even what you knew about her already, it took you by surprise that you were completely left behind.
Well, I remember the same thing in the Arc. I followed her in the Arc. I was drawn 1, she was drawn 2 on Ulysses, and she went round. She's very keen that day with Frankie in amongst them. But literally, as soon as she saw a bit of daylight, the acceleration on her was phenomenal.
She is a phenomenon. The way that she's built this remarkable CV is extraordinary. And yesterday, the first day where she's actually returned to a venue and won, because her previous triumphs had been at all different racecourses. Her versatility, her courage, and not to mention her class, quite extraordinary, and set her apart as a modern great. She's trained by John Gosden, who's on the line now. John, good morning.
Morning.
So much upon which to reflect yesterday. You were kept extremely busy in interviews throughout the afternoon, but I suppose there's one thing you don't mind, and that's talking about another Enable victory. Quite extraordinary.
Yes, it is. She's actually about 25 yards from me, having a bit of grass grazing right now. She got back last night and ate all of her feed up. So it was interesting what Jim was saying. She races more like an old pro now, rather than the youthful exuberance of her 3-year-old years. She's a little more measured in everything, I think. But she seems in good order this morning, and Mr. Dettori came round. He looks pretty tired, actually, more tired than her.
He described himself yesterday, John, as being emotionally exhausted by the whole experience. Can you identify with that?
Yeah, I think so. I think despite the cheery front, he feels the whole weight of responsibility upon him, and he absolutely adores the fillies, so he wants to do things right by her. Interesting enough, he said she wasn't particularly happy with the soft ground down the hill into Swinley Bottom. He said she wasn't really quite where he wanted. He wanted to get in, couldn't get a position. He went from 4 wide to 3 wide, dropped back to 2 wide. You can't go around Swinley Bottom 3 and 4 wide, that's for sure. And I think to that extent, he said she came good. As soon as she started climbing out of Swinley Bottom, she suddenly locked back on with it, which is probably why he came from third last right up to contest the lead so quickly at the head of the straight.
Struck me that much has been made of the fact that Frankie barely touched her with the stick. What do you think was going through his head there?
Well, I think it's maturity as a jockey, and when you really understand the horse and know the horse you're riding, and you know they're stretching and giving you everything, that's why you go one flick to get her stretching, and then it's sort of just waving the stick. And I think he probably felt he had it under control, and it depends. I mean, we're not getting into a stick debate now.
Definitely not.
You want to keep a horse balanced. It's very important. And of course, the stick is an important. To me, it is a key ingredient. But if your horse is balanced and stretching, you're not really going to do much good by giving him a slap. You're much better stretching with the horse and keeping them balanced in that situation. He knows it well. She was in full flight. He wasn't really going to disturb that, is probably the long and short of it.
When Crystal Ocean really started digging in and grinding in on the fence, was there ever a moment from your vantage point that you thought you might be in trouble?
Yeah, very much so. I think Stouty and I are probably feeling the same thing at that critical moment, just at the 1 marker, and just around that point that he was. And as I said before on Monday in the interviews, he's a magnificent horse, and he is all heart and talent. I thought he was singly impressive in the Prince of Wales at Royal Ascot, and I could see this wasn't going to be easy, And he's down there on the rail. He's had a nice run through, a good draw. He's been beautifully ridden and placed, so it was bound to be a battle. And yeah, but that's what top-class racing is all about. And when you get something of that nature, literally a duel, the whole length of the straight there with everyone shouting, that's the best of our game. But it certainly was a Cheltenham roar. And
you mentioned that she's racing more like an old pro now. Does that mean, do you think that we're unlikely to see one of those displays that characterised her 3-year-old season, where she was drawing right away from horses and really putting them to the sword? Do you think she knows that she just needs to do what she has to do? She's put the field to the sword, but so's he. Yeah. I think they are the two best, as I said
before. We got the Derby winner and the horses with him. You've got obviously the best older horse in Europe and the world. You've got the best one coming out of France, and she's the best female race mare. And you know they are showing a clean pair of heels in the rest of that field. The three of them. Let's be clear about that. So you know when you're beating slightly inferior opposition, it's a whole lot easier to be skipping away. But that was a race testing every sinew.
And I know, John, that you've had so much experience, you don't like getting carried away with these things, but would it be fair to say that she's taken you on a more interesting and satisfying journey than any other racehorse that you've trained?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, you know, as everybody knows, she's come back from, you know, injury surgery last year, and then from a week of sickness between her Kempton race and the Arc. And she's just shown such amazing mental strength, which is why I slightly alluded to the fifth set at Wimbledon, and it's 12 games all. It's the sort of Djokovic, Federer, and Nadal. You know, these guys are so mentally strong, and both she and Chris Logan showed that is so much a component of what a great athlete is.
And we know that the thoroughbred can be an innately fragile creature as well, and there's a real poignant sense of grim irony in a sense that she continues apace, and we tragically lost Sea of Class this week, the filly that had given us such a great battle in the Arc last year, and the horse that you trained to such great effect last year, Roaring Lion, he's on the critical list down under, just having had colic surgery. It does give us a reminder that these horses are flesh and blood and have their own innate fragilities.
Yes, I mean, obviously in the case of Sea of Class, it was an important tragedy with her getting cancer. It really is, but we'll always remember, just reminding how ephemeral life is, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. That's a much better way of putting it, and you know, obviously we're thinking of her, and the news of Roaring Lion. It sounds perhaps more positive than it was last night. I know we're going to get an update from David Redvers very shortly.
I know nothing about that, so you've rather shocked me with that news.
I'm so sorry, John. Yeah, he suffered an attack of colic last night in New Zealand. And they've suspended stallion duties in New Zealand for the time being, and I think the plan is to get him stabilised and then to bring him back to Tween Hill. So apologies for surprising you with that.
Yeah, I didn't know that at all.
Just dropped this morning, but
he's a lovely horse. He's mentally strong. He got better as the season went, bigger and stronger. So let's hope he can come through this one. It's a long old flight down there.
He had an amazing season last year. He campaigned very boldly, and he answered every call. How bold are you inclined to be now with Enable from here to the end of 2019?
Well, she'll tell us. She's very expressive, and she'll tell us what she wants to do. I mean, whether we talked about it yesterday, actually, and Teddy Grimm talked as well, whether we go to York or whether we just go straight to the Arc. But you know, I think we'll start making those decisions in the next week.
And if she does go to York, would you favour your route of the Yorkshire Oaks to the Arc, or would you like to have a go at the Juddmonte?
Well, she's in both races, but so you know that would be a later decision. You're training for the same meeting, so that makes it fairly easy. But I think the key thing is whether she goes to York at all, or whether we just, you know, do the other thing you can do, just freshen her up and bring her up. She runs well fresh, bring her up to the Arc without having taken any risks in going anywhere else.
And looking ahead to Goodwood this week, you know, Stradivarius, another horse who's essentially public property now, much like Enable is, but a horse probably you can enjoy maybe more sort of in a more sort of shackle-free way.
Right. Yes, I was with Mr. Nielsen yesterday with Bredin, and yes, you can. He's a horse that you can really enjoy those cup horses, and he's been fantastic in the way he's, you know, fought his way through 2 seasons. Obviously, he carries a lot more weight here because the 3-year-olds come into the race and they're getting a lot of weight. So we know about that. He won it as a 3-year-old. So, you know, the demand of the race, it will be severe enough on him, and I'm sure they'll probably make a strong face of it. But he stays, so, you know, he's in great form. He's just been out here in front of me having a little trot, and he's playing, and he looks to be really enjoying life at the moment, so let's hope it goes well on Tuesday for him.
Well, that's great news, and fantastic to hear Enable's in great shape and 8 up last night. John, thank you very much indeed for your time, and we look forward to seeing you at Goodwood.
All the best.
John Gosden, once again I apologise for rather surprising him with the Roaring Lion news, and we'll get an update on that a little bit later on. And you could hear there he was somewhat shell shocked by that as well. Good to hear Enable's in good spirits.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the great aspects of the story is that, in a sense, this whole European flat season has been built around Enable progressing towards the first Sunday of October, because no horse has ever won 3 Arcs, and that date in October was always set to the date on which this campaign, this year in horse racing, was built around. But by giving us this day yesterday, and that King George in tandem with Crystal Ocean, we've almost had icing on the cake. We've had an extra bonus that we might not have expected in the manner of a performance and the memory it leaves. And it does leave John now with that difficult decision of whether to go to York or not. I thought at Sandown, he was very clear in what he was saying, in that he much preferred the idea of going Yorkshire Oaks over Juddmonte International. And I thought it was pretty easy to infer from what he was saying yesterday and today that he's now minded, I suspect, not to go to York, on the basis that, say, everything with Enable is built around the Arc. Yeah. That is a thing, winning a third Arc. That's why Prince Khalid very boldly kept her in training, and we're all beneficiaries of that. And I just wonder if they'll think, when they look at the relative potential upsides of going to York, whether they'll just think, let's freshen her up and go to Paris.
Jim, how would you read it?
Similar, to be honest. Obviously, there's 2 races. You could either run the Juddmonte or the Yorkshire Oaks, but the most important thing is that she is in tip-top form for the Arc. So I suppose the filly herself will tell you what sort of form she's in, and she might have had a harder race than you probably expect yesterday, and they've pulled a long way clear, and she's trained by a genius, and I'm sure he'll get it right.
With any great thoroughbred horse race, the wonderful thing is it will always provoke debate afterwards. Whether the sort of emotional resonance of that success, as expressed by you so beautifully, Lee, is matched by the absolute merit of the performance is always something that's going to be debated. It was debated on social media at length last night. James Willoughby's on the line now. James, what did Enable achieve yesterday?
Well, she added yet another win to a remarkable CV. But at the same time, we must note that Enable's last 4 Group 1 wins have all been gained by under a length. She wasn't the best horse at the weights in yesterday's King George. She wasn't the best horse at the weights in last year's Arc either. In both races, she won because she received a sex allowance. And to answer your question, this leaves us with a problem in awarding her a rating in line with the remarkable CV to which you refer. Now, yesterday after the race, we understandably saw a lot of frothy comment on social media, and all that's great and speaks well for the excitement this generates in people who watch racing, and all of it is totally valid. But we read from one British trainer that Enable is, quote, arguably the greatest mare of all time. Now, this could be true, but we struggle to rate her the same kind of horse as Scepter or Pretty Polly or Miesque or Dahlia or Allez France, or even, dare I say it, Winks. And does this all matter, though, is the question. Should we just sit back and bathe in the excitement of watching a race and then exchange our comments with each other, which come straight from our emotions? You can certainly enjoy horse racing at this level without worrying about anything about the nuances of form study or ratings or anything like that. In the Arc, Enable will be giving weight to 3-year-olds Sotsas and Japan. Now, I believe that both of these horses are more talented animals than Crystal Ocean. The last time that Crystal Ocean, who's won only half of his stakes races, looked a good horse in the eye, he got beat 6 lengths by Cracksman. So maybe after Enable runs in the Arc, maybe we will get the chance to assign her a rating that lines up better with what's arguably one of the best CVs we've ever seen. Or maybe, lucky, we won't.
Her 3-year-old campaign, James, was characterised by performances of absolute dominant brilliance. John Gosden was, I thought, very interesting in the interview I've just done, where he said, now I feel that she's becoming more of a pro, and you're unlikely to see maybe a performance like the one she was putting up in, say, the Irish Oaks and the King George when she beat Jim on Ulysses and and the Yorkshire Oaks that year, and even the Arc that year when she won by daylight.
That's one interpretation. Certainly, another interpretation is that she's not quite as good. That's the interpretation which you would get from looking at her figures. She was rated 128 officially in those days. Now she's a few pounds less than that. Maybe that's just a function of Enable's unique racing character and her jockey. Maybe between them they conspire to win the races by these small margins that we continually seen. But in the Arc 12 months ago, there's no doubt that she should have lost that race if the runner-up had been ridden more efficiently. That's not a controversial view if you believe in the physics of the situation. So this is my point here in the round, is that of all the horses I can remember, this is one of the most interesting from the point of view of discussing this juxtaposition between the CV of a racehorse, which in Enable's case is undoubtedly one of the best of all time, and the fact that the distances that she's winning by and the horses that she's beating don't really give her the right to be regarded as definitely superior to some of those names I reeled off before, who were beating male horses and younger horses by wide margins in their races. And we only have to think of the days of Frankel and See the Stars to see that Frankel was quite obviously in a different league. So the question I want to leave you with is there something to be learned from this juxtaposition between Enable, or is it just that in those days we didn't have social media?
On that note, James, I will say thank you very much and pose that very question to Lee Mottershead and Jim Crowley. Lee, very interesting thoughts there from James, and really interesting to ponder. You could sit and think and think and think and think on this until you blew in the face.
Yeah, and James is absolutely right. It is a fascinating juxtaposition between what our hearts tell us and what we see when we look at all those ones against Enable's name and we look at the number against her name in ratings. I'd say just in terms of the physical rating, I do wonder whether we underrate Crystal Ocean, in the sense that James referred to that Champion Stakes performance. Stout was very keen to say after Prince of Wales Stakes that wasn't him that day, and there were reasons why he underperformed. And I think if you look at Sir Michael's record at improving horses from 3 to 4 to 5, the Singspiels, the Pilsudskis, those sort of horses, I think there is justification in thinking that Crystal Ocean is possibly a better horse than we give him credit for. And I also think as well that when we do come to, at the end of a horse's career, contemplate where that horse sits in the pecking order of the greats, it isn't just about the rating, although the rating is clearly the overall primary barometer. It is about things like longevity and achievement and career record, which is why on the bare figures, Winks doesn't compare with some of the all-time great race mares. But if you asked anyone in Australian racing now, and indeed I'm sure in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years' time, where does she sit in the all-time? They'd say she's up there with Phar Lap. So I think, and we shouldn't forget, horse racing isn't just a sport about what our heads tell us. It's a sport about what our hearts tell us, and it's entertainment. And I think if a horse like Enable and a horse like Winks can do something for us like that, then they deserve to be remembered in the pantheon of greats, even though the numbers might indicate otherwise.
And we spoke about this at the very beginning of the show, didn't we? What is her impact value? Is her impact value greater than her relative merit, essentially? It could be.
I think it's like Winks now. Everybody's onto Enable now, and everybody wanted to see it win yesterday. I think everybody, if she'd have got beaten, I think everyone would have been gutted. She reminds me, and remember See the Stars, he never actually used to win by very far, but he only beat what he had to beat, and I think she's the same. Obviously this season she has had a different preparation. I think she's in better form going to the Arc this year than she may have been last year. And I think, like James Willoughby said, horses like Japan may well serve it up to her, and she may have a tougher assignment in the Arc this year. But I think her record speaks for itself. I mean, Breeders' Cups, Oaks, 2 King Georges, an Eclipse, 2 Arcs. You tell me one to beat that.
Jim makes that really interesting comparison there between with Sea the Stars and Franklin. James referred to Sea the Stars and Franklin as well. And although not necessarily trying to plug a piece I've done today, but in the post is a 2,500 word big read on the summer of Sea the Stars, available in print and online for members. But there was interesting lining, lots of nice fresh insight from Murtagh Knox and also from O'Brien and from Kinana Knox and also O'Brien and Murtagh. And John Ox was saying to me how before the eclipse he was in the paddock with Mick Cann. They'd walked away from Christopher Choi. He's about to leg up Mick onto the horse, and he said he turned to Mick and quietly said, "Mick, show him off today. Give him a couple of cracks and let him go away and win by a few lengths." He said Mick had said to him, "John, you're mad. This horse will never win by a wide margin. He's just not that sort of horse. He won't do it." And I think there is that sense that some horses, as John was perhaps indicating there when he was talking about Label, aren't going to go away and win by 5 or 6 lengths. And we maybe have to, whilst it might pain us, we might have to accept that when we try to interpret what they've performed, what they've achieved.
Well, the debate will roll, I think, and that's what makes part of it so enjoyable. We've really got something to talk about, and fingers crossed we will see Enable at York, though it's certainly not a definite from what John Gosden was saying a few moments ago. Let's talk about the racing at York yesterday and feature LR Cam's victory in the Sky Bet York Stakes, because he was very impressive by Frankel out of Attraction. He's a horse you know well, Jim. There were great expectations on his shoulders last year. You were at Ascot, so you weren't able to go and ride him yesterday, and Dane O'Deal did the stream, but you're looking forward to getting back on him, though.
For sure. He, on the ratings yesterday, he had a bit of work to do with the likes of Riga Reality and Adiab, who beat him quite comfortably at Ascot last time, but it was super. He's this year he's been ultra consistent, and he's won going away. I know he's one of Sheikh Hamdan's favourites, and being how he's bred as well. And I think Mark Johnson said this year this horse is just going to improve for racing and keeping him busy, and it's clearly obviously had a few issues last year, so he didn't achieve his potential last year, but he's certainly back on track now.
Yeah, he is. What would be the next obvious step? Do you think they'll have a crack at the Juddmonte with him?
I'm sure he'll certainly probably have an entry. I haven't really spoke to Angus Gold or anybody about it, but after that run yesterday, it would look an obvious race, and I think the main race for him would be the Champion Stakes at the end of the year.
And before we end this segment of the programme, a quick nod to the Johnston Juggernaut that is going to break every record this year. There's no doubt about that. It's insane.
It's phenomenal. It just every year it just doesn't slow up. I've ridden out up there, and it is just the most unbelievable place to go to, and it's just an absolute winning machine.
And talking about big yards and big and very successful yards, Richard Hannon Jr. is in the building. I just call him Richard Hannon now, don't we? No, we don't call him Richard Hannon Jr. He's Richard Hannon now. He's that guy, the younger one. He's in the building, and he will be on a little bit later on. Right after this break, however, I will be introducing you to a man who has been absolutely crucial to the well-being of jockeys on racecourses for the last 2 decades. Matty Stevens, the man whose catering enterprise has kept you all fed, watered, entertained, etc. He will be joining us right after this.
Luck on Sunday, proudly sponsored by Al Basti Equiworld Dubai.
Now, this is our media training scheme, calling all jockeys past and present. RMG and Jets are offering the opportunity to partake in their media traineeship. The traineeship will take the form of 2 5-day programmes over the course of a month later this year. Things included will be intensive training in the following areas: gallery and racecourse production, filming on location and presenting, and some punditry as well. Email traineeship@racingtv.com and outline why you feel you should be considered for this traineeship. Visit www.racecoursemediagroup.com for more information, and email traineeship@racingtv.com. If you are a jockey past or present and you want to be involved in the RMG and Jets media training scheme, get in touch now.
Summer's here and Racing TV and Goodwood Racecourse have teamed up to offer our members a truly mouth-watering prize for the opening day of this year's Qatar Goodwood Festival. This is your chance to join celebrated chef Tom Kerridge for an exceptional day on the Goodwood estate, starting with lunch in the exquisite ballroom of Goodwood House, followed by an afternoon at the season's sporting and social highlight in the exclusive Secret Garden. This relaxed and intimate experience is a very special opportunity for a select group to enjoy the culinary skills and company of one of the world's most sought-after chefs. Your day will begin with champagne and canapes before you are whisked away to enjoy a day of hospitality at the Qatar Goodwood Festival. With your transport fully arranged, this really is a tasty offer not to be missed from Goodwood and Racing TV. Just head to goodwood.com/racingtvcomp to give yourself a chance of a glorious day out at the races.
Do you love to stay up to date with all the latest racing action? Do you want exclusive access to breaking news and competitions? Are you looking to connect with fellow racing fans? Look no further. Our social media channels feature everything you love about racing TV and more, right at your fingertips. Stay ahead of the game, even when you're on the move, with breaking news, fast results and racing replays. Available on our Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and YouTube channels. With regular social media competitions, polls and discussions, you can connect with thousands of like-minded community members every single day. Stay in the know with 24/7 updates, available on your laptop, smartphone or tablet. There's always something happening on the Racing TV social media channels, so follow us today.
As a member of Racing TV, you get access to dedicated live racecourse feeds through Racing TV Extra. All you need to do is log in with your Racing TV username and password. Racing TV Extra puts you in control, so you can focus on the races or meetings that matter to you. If watching on a desktop, tablet or Apple TV, you can select from 1 to 4 live screens. On mobile phones and Amazon Fire TV, single screen options are available. Never miss a moment of action with Racing TV Extra at racingtv.com. Luck on Sunday, proudly sponsored by Al Basti Equiworld Dubai.
Welcome back. You're watching Luck on Sunday in the company of Lee Mottershead, Jim Crowley. Jim Crowley was saying a little earlier on in the programme when I was speaking to him that a jockey's life at this time of the year is particularly difficult, especially if you're going for that Jockey's Championship. It's relentless and you need the sustenance and you need the right sustenance, and the man who's been providing that to the jockeys for the last 19 years, courtesy of his mobile catering business, is Matty Stevens, who at one point was looking after in the high teens of racecourses, but is now still looking after the jockeys at Ascot and at Taunton. Sadly, owing to financial pressures, has had to wind down the bulk of his business, but still hopes to be very much on the scene. And Matty, it's great to welcome you to Luck on Sunday.
Thanks, Nick. This is just unbelievable to think that the man that makes the tea is on the Nick Luton Show. So thanks very much for the opportunity.
But you are not, as Jim will tell us in a minute, you are not just the man who makes the you're not just the man who makes the tea, because it's absolutely crucial to a jockey's day that they get fed what they want, but they get fed properly as well.
Most definitely. And, from the tea and sandwiches that we once had to what we've got today is absolutely unbelievable. To have gone to Stratford all those years ago and to have been in the position to offer the service, and then the racecourse supplied the food and the drinks, and then to have spoken to the valets back then, Tom and John Buckingham, and to have gone and met Michael Caulfield at the Jockeys Association, which pushed me forward to the other race courses. It's been absolutely brilliant to think that, I went from Stratford to, as you say, 16 tracks at the height, 22 race courses in total. I think I've had a day at before now. And it's just been a wonderful experience.
And it really struck me last night. You had over 100 messages from licensed professionals and jockeys saying, you know, good on you, mate. You've done so much for us over the years. And it's not just provided food. You've obviously been someone who all the jockeys can come and have a chat to in confidence and just away from the glare of the spotlight of the race day.
It has been totally unbelievable. I had to pinch myself. I almost felt that I died. It was like reading, you know, all these wonderful
Living
comments.
A picture,
It was. It really was. And you know, it's all testament to them, because when I did start out, as I say, in 2000, with the help of the Prince's Trust, you know, it was for the jockeys, because if I felt this was an area that I could offer so much to, because I've got such a rapport with the lads, having done a couple of years service at Stratford, having a keen interest within the sport itself, and having a catering background. So to put those three things together was just unbelievable in a sport that I truly love. So, you know, there's been many good days, and to have a day like we had yesterday was just unbelievable, to see the two horses fighting out the finish in the King George.
And you know, the old adage goes, you are what you eat. In jockeys' cases, that can be a pretty confusing situation.
Definitely, and I think we've got so much good classroom-based support now, and so many good support teams. The network with the Jockeys Association have put together with the university in Liverpool, with all the helplines that we've got, with the nutritionists, with the psychologists. There's just so much available for jockeys today. It's second to none. Unfortunately, I suppose the downside is that the food side of things has grown, from the tea and sandwiches that we once had to something now which has probably got 50, 60 ingredients in it, but unfortunately the facilities perhaps haven't grown with it. The funding perhaps hasn't
jockeys'
grown with
canteen
it.
facilities.
Yeah, exactly. And I think my whole assessment on it all was back in January when I contacted the courses and said I just recently sat down with my accountant and the numbers still weren't working for me, and they totally agreed. Was that the fact of we need to try and do something to make the area's better to cater for the foods that we really need the jockeys to have.
Because is that because you were having to spend more on produce, but you weren't getting the commensurate comeback from the racecourses?
I think yes. Basically, it was definitely down to the fact of the guidelines were increasing. You know, you're now assessed on 3 levels: gold, silver, and bronze. And thankfully at Ascot, you know, we achieved the highest award there of the gold, which was rightful for Ascot. And obviously, that's something that I've prided myself on over the years. I've certainly done my very best in the timescales that I've had, and with the foods that I've had available to me. And the facilities that I've had available to me, but I just feel with perhaps the guidelines that we have in place now, it works better for their on-course catering teams rather than a one-man band like myself, who have the necessary people to put that in place and to deliver what we need to deliver. You know, I'm definitely not you know, decrying the progress, because the progress needed to be made. But I think perhaps the progress that we've made in nutrition has been absolutely brilliant, but the facilities haven't really moved with the times.
Within which you need to work.
Which I have to have to work where it would work better from a racecourse kitchen, supplying the food, and unfortunately it's worked so well for me because I can drip feed it and deliver it as the jockeys want it, rather than it all coming across at a certain time. So it's worked well for me over the years on that basis. But unfortunately, it's just getting to that place that where we need it to be.
But how important, Jim, is it for you to have somebody like Matty who knows everyone, who knows everyone's different tastes? And yeah, it's not easy, is it, trying to cater for a bunch of jockeys?
No, it's not, because everybody's different, aren't they? And I think
most definitely,
you must
Jim.
have a great memory, because you know what everybody wants, and if you're shooting off, you might be going off down to Salisbury and you want to take something with you, and some of the tracks are supplying, you know, a meal, and you haven't got time to sit down and eat it, and you want something, just jump in your car, go and eat on the go. And Matty's not just that, but he's been a friend to all of us as well. I remember meeting you at I think it was Huntingdon the first time I met you, 20
think
years
Jim,
ago.
I think you Toxter. I think we had many a chat on a lot of jump tracks, and I certainly remember. I think was it what was the Italian race that you won? Was it the Grand National?
Something
the Italian
like that,
Grand National. One of the first big jump races, and talking about that and stuff like that. And it was inevitable to me that Jim was going to end up being a champion flat jockey as soon as you turned to the flat.
I wish you'd told me.
So strong.
But it got me into 33.
No, exactly.
In 1996 at Utah, so Matty could have put us in the right direction.
To be quite honest with you, I remember the discussion well, and it was just before Ascot and Jim come in, and we were looking through the people that had got the chances for the current championship, and we were talking through, and everyone was mentioned apart from Jim Crowley himself, and I think Jim Crowley was the guy that had started the conversation. So, it was inevitable that year that he'd done it rather well, hadn't he? He tried to source out who the dangers were, but he was the main threat himself. So, it's
I thought he was supposed to be your friend.
No, without a doubt, it's been a great relationship I've had over the years, and it hasn't been work. It's been the actual race course daily stuff has just been absolutely unbelievable, and Jim's right. I like to think what the lads are going to ask before they even ask, and I think that's the beauty of it. And as sad as it sounds, I think if I went on Mastermind, I could tell you every single sugar that a jockey has in his hot drink. That's how sad.
Whether it's 5, 6, or 7.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And again, this is a nutritional thing that they won't like, but I think champion jockeys, certainly of yesteryear, they used to have 5 or 6 sugars in the tea, but that was the way they did it. They probably wouldn't eat and get the energy from that. The Kieran Fallons, the Tony McCoys, that's the way they lived. But yeah, it has been about the individual service, and probably, I would always play it down that my food wasn't really the best food on the race course, because I am a one-man band and there's a lot to do and a lot to operate, and I can only deal with what I'm given. But I hope I've given the best service over the last 20 years, because as Jim says, it's not just been about the food from my point of view. There's been a lot of things that we've talked about, and it's great to see careers evolve. I've got to the point now where I'm getting a little bit worried if I get a third generation coming into the weighing room. I really have been there a long time. There's been plenty of second generations, and I'm sure a third generation, is not too far away. So to see the likes of Adam Beschitska go to America and Rachel King do so well from the amateur ranks in Australia, which is superb, and I hope she gets her Shergar Cup debut at some point, because I know that's a real dream of hers. And the likes of Doug White, Mike Smith, Joe Moreira sat down with my little boy last year at the Shergar Cup, and Dad said he's a brilliant jockey, but he's not very good at Nintendo. And it's little things like that. And there have been so many things over the years. I said to you on the phone last night, Nick, to have the late great Sir Henry Cecil walk past my tea bar and say, "Is that a crumpet and jam?" I said, "Yes, it is, Henry." He said, "May I have one?" "Yeah, please do, Henry." And 5 minutes later, he come back, he said, "Couldn't have another." It's absolutely brilliant. I grew up at Stratford Racecourse. It was literally on the back of me, so I spent many an hour at Stratford Racecourse, sat by the open ditch, willing jockeys at 7, 8, 9 years old, fall off, so I could just go over, pick the whip up and the hat up in the old days, and just, there you go, fellow, type of thing. And then it progressed.
It's like you at the point-to-point when you were little.
Yeah.
The only thing is, I don't think I'll be getting a ride anytime soon. But it's that relationship that we've built up, and I think because of I've struggled with the emotional eating side of things, and there's so many areas that we can relate to, and I think within racing, I think that's the thing that we've got to develop more than anything, is the emotional side of the eating. I think there has to be a lot more research done in that, and I think there are so many other key areas where we can aid the lads that are struggling with their relationships with food.
So how food alters your mind, essentially?
Yeah, most definitely, because a lot of these lads aren't eating to feed the body, they're eating to feed the mind. That's the crucial fact of it all, and that's what it boils down to. We can do all the nutritional research in the world, and believe me, the guys, again, I can't emphasise what they've done up at John Moore's, and the lads, when they go up to them, and the trials that they've done with the food packages and everything that they've given them. And I have lads now that literally, Nick, at one stage, the amount of money that I spent on energy drinks was astronomical.
Was it really?
It was astronomical. Now there are so many guys that are reverting to the original H2O, the sparkling water, and the normal water,
which is much better for you.
Most definitely. And that's the key, hydration, isn't it? There's so many of you boys that are sweating, and if you can keep hydrated, it's half the battle. But every single jockey have got their own different way of doing things, and that's the key. We need to give them choices, Nick.
And presumably for you over the years, part of the success for you and part of your relationship with the jockeys is based on working with them and not judging them on their food choices, because not everyone's going to be making
most definitely
sensible or rational choices.
And what you have got to do as well is you've got to feel out, and you've got to speak to the guys that you can see are struggling with it, and make them feel okay about their overeating at the times when they are overeating, and they do unfortunately go and make themselves sick and stuff like that. That's something that we are trying to get away from, but is very, very difficult. And I truly believe that the only way we'll get away from that is if we do portion control the foods that are available to the jockeys. It's long been a thought of mine and a dream of mine that one day we would get to the science specific foods, and it would be managed at a central base, and it would be distributed up and down the country. I think that's the only way really that we can manage this area once and for all.
And for you still got Ascot and still got Taunton.
I have, which is brilliant.
Which is great.
I can't thank Chris Stickles enough and his team down at Ascot. They've been superb. And it gives me that passion and the drive that I've enjoyed, and the rapport with the lads. And I've obviously Bob Young down at Taunton as well. He's been absolutely brilliant. And, I did get a message on Twitter that said, you've got so much good support. Why are you giving it up? And it boils down to the fact of it took me 20 years to realise that you can't make any money from it, and realistically the food has come on massively in the last 20 years. From, as I said, it was literally a few sandwiches, and they used to play hide the sandwich at Toaster, I believe, in yesteryear. The guys that
I won't
used
ask
to
you
do
what that was.
No, exactly. The likes of John Frankham and Bob Champion and people like that have said how the team men used to hide them underneath the counter so that they could take them home if they weren't eaten. That's the type of things that you were dealing with back in the day. But no, we've evolved to where we are today, and Ascot certainly it's like a 100-seater restaurant in there, and Taunton have got a very good facility that they've added on in the last few years, and they're both race courses which have basically said to me, look, whatever we need to do, we want to do.
Matty, can't thank you enough for coming.
No, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Matty Stevens, who has been feeding and watering the jockeys for the last couple of decades. We're off to play Hide the Chocolate Brownie, and when you rejoin us, we'll be talking to one of the riders in the Magnolia Cup, Kitty Trice.
Luck on Sunday, proudly sponsored by Al Basti Equiworld Dubai. Did you know as a Racing TV member, you and a guest can go racing every month of the year? Simply apply online for the dates you want at racingtv.com/clubdays. It couldn't be more simple. All you'll need on the day is your Racing TV metal badge and the printed e-ticket to gain admission. If you're lucky enough to get VIP tickets, you'll have access to the Racing TV reserved area for the day. This includes free tea and coffee and a pre-race talk from one of our presenters and pundits.
If you're lucky enough to get a club day, it's absolutely terrific.
It's a friendly atmosphere and it's just a fantastic day out.
If you come once or twice a month, then you're paying for itself, really.
You get a chance to go in the paddock. I've even had a chance to pick the best turned out horse and give the lad 50 quid. The lad was jumping all over the place. Fantastic, you know.
Oh, give it a try. It's definitely worth it.
For the full list of club days, go to racingtv.com/clubdays. New dates are added each quarter, so keep checking back. So you've seen the show on TV, why not come and live it on track at a Racing TV Club Day? Luck on Sunday, proudly sponsored by Al Basti Equiworld Dubai.
So much good racing to look forward to this week at the Qatar Goodwood Festival. Glorious Goodwood, as we know and love it. And one of the great features of Glorious Goodwood in recent years has become the Magnolia Cup, chiefly because it raises an awful lot of money for charity, the Duke of Richmond's brainchild of a few years ago. And it will do so again this time. And a terrific lineup going to post this year, including the Racing Post's Kitty Trice, who joins us now and has been documenting this in an excellent video diary on racingpost.com, available to all members.
Yes,
I got that right.
RPTV,
And I said, Kitty, welcome to the programme. I said you're the only person who's got more words in today's paper than Lee Motteteg, which in itself is an achievement. How's it all going?
It's good. It feels like it's come around so quickly. It's only 4 days, which just time has flown by. And I'm going out to ride twice more at Pat Phelan's in Epsom just to get sort of my eye in even more. And it's going well, and I'm really enjoying it. So not long now.
Just watching the diaries, you seem a pretty cool customer as a general. You never seem to get too up, too down, just quite nice, quite calm and level, just got the right temperament for the racing game.
I've had to work on, I've done lots of riding before, not on racehorses. So the first time I actually sat on a racehorse was in February. It actually has taken quite a bit of work to just keep calm and just carry on, literally, because you've got to do that on a racehorse. I mean, they can pick up so quickly your mood, your emotions, and I was quite nervous the first couple of times that I rode, and actually it's sort of, one time it didn't go so well. It wasn't anything mad, but I just had a chat to myself and thought, right, you can make the most of this and you can sort of try your best and you just got to keep level-headed. So yeah, hopefully that's coming across.
But you did compete to quite a high level in other disciplines, didn't you?
Yeah, I did a bit of showing. Needless to say, my horse, Buddy, he's nowhere near a racehorse. He's actually a cob, so it's quite a different sort of way of riding. But yeah, it's similar in terms of sort of atmosphere and dealing with crowds and that sort of thing. I mean, I think Thursday will be a different sort of type of experience to anything else I've had, but I'm looking forward to it.
And this is this your Magnolia Cup mount here that we're looking at?
Yeah, Alkitios.
Right. But do you have to change his name for Thursday?
Yeah,
so what are you changing it to Racing Post Flyer or something similar?
I don't know. I don't know if I get to make the decision as to what his name will be, but yeah, he'll have a different name, so be excited to see what it is.
And are you feeling the love and support from your colleagues? Are Lee and co giving you all the right words of encouragement?
Yeah, everyone's been so supportive, from sort of donating to sort of just saying, you'll be fine and stuff. Like, I've had the odd joke about sort of, you in it to win it, Kitty, you'll smash it. I'm just like, I honestly just want to enjoy the experience, and just to get around and finish it will be a huge achievement. So yeah, all jokes aside, just want to do my best, really.
I know I'm not doing a lot this morning to keep you out of the limelight, but I guess you're fortunate in some senses in that there's a lot of quite high-profile women in the lineup this year. So can you been able to be a little less kind of thrust forward than otherwise you might have been, which is probably quite nice, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously because I work in racing, like there'll be a spotlight on it from that angle. But obviously we've got Victoria Pendleton, Olympic champion, and sort of Vogue Williams, who's a model, and you know, there's different sort of pressure from them, I guess, in a sense. So, but yeah, it's all good fun, and everyone's great.
And tell me a bit about the charity you're raising money for.
So, Wellbeing of Women. So it researches sort of all sorts of issues for women. So ranging from pregnancies to gynecological problems. So any, you know, like ovarian cancer and that sort of thing. And they're sort of discovering new ways to find treatments and that sort of thing. It's so they just do a whole lot of, it's across the spectrum, and it's an amazing charity.
Now, Jim, Goodwood's, it's 5.5 furlongs, isn't it, the Magnolia Cup? Now, it's not the easiest 5.5 furlong track in the world. It is probably if you're on Battash and you're a champion jockey with thousands of winners under your belt. But if you've not really ridden racehorses before, I mean, you sitting there laughing.
No, it's. I think the first couple of years it was on. You used to get a few loose ones pulling up, didn't you? But I think everybody's sort of really working now, and like you say, you're riding out, and but it's a great track. You run downhill, you know, so you just have to watch the pull-up area because there's an exit just as you go past the line, and the first thing you do when you think you've done it, you relax. You think, I've gone past the winning line. Next thing, whoop, you're on the floor and looking back up at them. But no, you'll really enjoy it, and be a great atmosphere. And the old saying, as Robert Cowell always says to you, go down steady, come back quick.
Yeah.
So speaks a trainer of sprinters. Yeah. But it's a terrific experience, and I think, as you were saying, Lee, you watch it now with slightly less trepidation than you used to.
Yes, I mean, they used to have the winning post right on the line, which meant that you'd watch the race sort of through your hands, because that pull-up at Goodwood right after the winning post, even for professional jockeys, it's probably quite hairy at times. So in the old days, they used to go straight up Trundle Hill. So you'd almost have the equivalent of an indoor sprint athletics track where you have something to bounce off against. But now you're swinging right-handed. But fortunately, they were very clever at Goodwood and realised that having had so many
move the winning line back.
Incidents, so it's a half furlong pole. So Kitty's got loads of time to apply the brakes, post for the camera. She goes past the winning post and then pull up.
Now, the good news for Kitty is that the horse has actually won the race before that you're riding.
Yes, but I'd just like to add that the lady who rode him, she's called Izzy Taylor, and she's ridden on the British team for eventing, so I don't pretend to be anywhere near that standard. So just in case anyone's planning on having a bet, I'm saying don't. So.
And how's it been? I must ask how it's been riding out for Chris Gordon, who's a very interesting character.
He's great. He's been so supportive. I was quite nervous. I told him one time, I think the other week, that I was quite nervous about, you know, in case I did go faster than I wanted. And he's just like, Alquicios will pull up at the end. You know, he knows what he's doing. You know, if you can sort of keep him behind, great, but he will pull up eventually. And I did go probably a bit faster than I wanted, but actually at the end he did pull up. He's at that age, he's 8, where he sort of knows all the tricks of the book. So I just got to trust in him and sort of overcome my sort of normal reactions, which is to be nervous. I've just got to trust in him, I think.
So you put yourself forward to it. So there was you all got asked at the Racing Post if anyone fancied the gig, and you put your hand up. Have there been any moments in the time between then and now that you've thought, what on earth am I doing? Or has it been a pleasant experience?
Yeah, there's been a couple of times so I've just been thinking, what am I doing? I've been speaking to my parents about it. I mean, my mum's quite horsey, so she understands, you know, the game and stuff. My dad, he's actually got into horses, but still, he's still going to be quite nervous on the day, I imagine. And they've asked, you know, do you want to keep doing this? You don't have to. And I have been nervous, but I'm more sort of stubborn. I was just like, I want to see it through right to the end, because, you know, it's for a great cause. It's not about winning. It's taking part, and well, for me, it's not about winning. And it's just, you know, a great occasion. So.
You see, I can sense that steely determination. You say it's not about winning, but come Thursday, when that flag goes down at the start, it will be about winning, won't it, Jim?
I think so. I think, like I said, it's a great opportunity, isn't it? You know, big crowds there and everything, and I'm sure you will be a bit nervous, but it's like once you're on the horse,
Yeah.
you'll forget about everything, and you know you'll be concentrating on what you're doing. The build up to it will probably be the most
Yeah.
nervous for you, getting there and all that sort of just before the race and in the paddock. But once you're cantering down to start, you'll be absolutely fine.
That's the thing. I was speaking to Rosie, who rode in it last year. I've been messaging her a few times. She's like, if there's anything you need to know, just ask. And I've definitely asked her a few things. I hope I haven't been driving her mad. And I was just like, you know, a bit nervous about the whole build-up. What would you suggest? And she's like, honestly, sort of the parade ring and the beforehand's the worst bit. You know, there's a busy atmosphere. It's crowded. Once you're on the horse, though, it's sort of like you go into sort of game mode. I suspect that's the case for sort of professional jockeys as well. So I think the beforehand's just the bit I've got to sort of try and sort of deal with, and then it's game on. So I think beforehand's going to be the hardest bit.
Brilliant. Game on for Thursday. And then after it's all over, you can relax and
Yeah,
enjoy
yeah.
a well-earned rest of the week, I think.
Hopefully write 2,000 words straight after.
Like Marcus Armitage when he won the Grand National all over again.
Yeah.
John Oaksey, eat your heart out.
That's right, yeah.
Kitty, thank you, but we're not releasing you just yet because you've very graciously agreed to help us with this week's Luck on Sunday Talking Points. Right, here we go. Nice one to kick off with. 3-year-olds this season. Well, where are they all, Lee Mottershead?
Well, they're doing rather well in some divisions and not in others. So we had a King George in which, thankfully, we had 3-year-old participation because that always enhances the King George. Anthony van Dijk clearly didn't run his race. Norway, his stable companion, was the only other 3-year-old in the race. He actually ran a fair race, finished mid-division. In the Eclipse, Telecaster was well beaten. On the other side, you look at the July Cup, and there were 12 runners, 5 3-year-olds, and they finished 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th. So we're always in that period now where we do get these clashes. We've got the Sussex Stakes next week when we'll see how Too Darn Hot and Circus Maximus compare to the older milers, who aren't a particularly good bunch anyway, so you'd be disappointed if they couldn't put it up to them. But certainly over middle distances, it does appear that the older horses are holding sway, and it also underlines the great benefit to the sport when these horses stay in training, because without the likes of Enable and Crystal Ocean and Wild Guys this year, some of those middle distance contests will be looking pretty weak.
It would be thin gruel. So, Kitty, who is going to end up being the top rated 3-year-old this year? Is it going to be a 10 Sovereigns, a Too Darn Hot, a King of Comedy? What's your hunch?
I thought 10 Sovereigns was very impressive in the July Cup, so he'd definitely be in with a shout. King of Comedies really interests me. I saw him on his debut at Sandown, and he actually beat Phoenix of Spain into 4th there, and obviously Phoenix of Spain has gone on to achieve what he's done, so I'd be really interested in King of Comedy. It's a shame he's not going for the Sussex Stakes, but I guess when you've got the firepower John Gosden's got, you've got to split them up, you've got to please the owners. So I'd be interested in one of those two, I think, as leading 3-year-olds.
And the bell will go, but I will just defy the orders of this programme briefly, Jim, because there's a horse called Mahatha that everyone's forgotten about, trained by Marcus Tregoning, and, well, he could yet be the best 3-year-old.
Oh, it would be nice. Obviously, he had the injury after the Greenham, and hopefully be back at the end of the season.
Did he give you a good feel?
Gave me a very good feel, and it's such a shame. Marcus prepared the horse beautifully, and it would have been a real nice touch for him to have got another good one.
I'll let you hold the ball as we move on and talk about the fillies allowance, the sex allowance in Group 1 races. Should it be done away with, given what we've been hearing earlier on in the programme?
It's a tough one. I think it certainly favours the 3-year-old fillies. If you've got a big, strong 3-year-old filly, and you've only got to look at the Arc de Triomphe over the years with Zarkava and Trev, Enable. You know, it's a massive thing for a filly to get that much amount of weight off a 4-year-old colt. It's hard to beat them.
The data tells you, Kitty, that it's just not really fair at the top level.
Yeah.
So why do we have it, do you think?
Well, I guess you're looking at Enable, like she got the allowance when she was 3, but she's the exception rather than the norm. She's a brilliant filly. She's done everything supremely well, but there are other fillies, I guess, who would benefit from that, as it's sort of, they're obviously not quite like her. But I think it's quite important to keep it, but it'd be interesting to see what would happen without it.
To keep it, to encourage that the participation of fillies in top-class races. I mean, in this country, it's the norm.
Yeah.
In America, for example, it's not the norm for fillies to race against colts.
No, I mean, as you go through the American year now, you'd love to see the best fillies and mares taking part in the British Cup Classic, for example, which you do get the Zenyatas that do that.
The odd one, yeah.
Yeah, but generally they're heading towards the distaff because that's their programme. I mean, it's there for the greater good as well, in the sense I think if you look across the two sexes, that generally that people would say that on the whole the physical attributes of the fillies and mares relative to the colts and geldings put them at a disadvantage. It's when you get to the top of the pyramid there's a problem. And you also have the strange contradiction of, you know, when every year when we get to the end of year rankings that the Longines do, where we see the table of the best horses, that sex allowance isn't built into those numbers. So it's a very difficult, a bit like weight for age, you're always going to have debates about it. And when you have an Enable or an Annie Power type horse over jumps, you have the same debate.
We're talking about integrity education. The BHA's been on the front foot this week, releasing a series of videos which will help young riders and licensed personnel and those who work in racing, just to warn them of some of the dangers that could be out there in terms of their livelihoods and their licences. This has got to be a good idea, hasn't it, Jim? Because there's all sorts of pitfalls that you can fall into without realising it.
For sure. I mean, look, when you've got to be so careful nowadays, because wherever you go as a jockey, you will get asked for a tip somewhere, whether it's somebody coming around to, paint your house or say, oh, what would you fancy today? Will you have a winner? And especially now Betfair came in, and you just don't know who you're talking to sometimes, and you've got to be so careful, and especially young lads working in racing, where somebody might approach them and ask them about horses if they're working in a big yard and things like that. And I think it's a good idea that people are being made aware of what you can and can't do and what you can and can't say. It's a positive thing, I think.
And also, even if someone is in a bar and buys you a drink, you've no idea who they are, and essentially they bought you, not they bought you, but you know what I mean, they've potentially bought something off you with that gift.
Exactly, and like I said, that wherever you, even walking out yesterday at Ascot, you'd have people leaning over the rails. Do you fancy this? Do you think it'll win? Do you think it'll win? And you've got to be so careful, and you just have to say yes. I think everything will win.
It's been quite a front foot week for the BHA, hasn't it? Quite a proactive week in terms of getting messaging out.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think they have to be applauded on this one. The videos that go with them, in which your part is very well played. They're clear, they're concise.
I'm not playing a part.
No. You're presenting them. You're and
suggesting I'm acting.
No, they're done very well. And I think it's interesting too, because I think in some ways similar to the Bloodstock review that's been going on, there's a danger that in racing and in Bloodstock we live within this little bubble, and we have our own views about what's right and what's wrong, and sometimes we forget what people outside of that bubble might think. And I think here these videos are very good for saying, well, listen, within the racing community this might be deemed to be correct, but if you look at the bigger picture, perhaps when you're talking to this person saying this, you're not doing the right thing.
Have you got a tip for us?
I'm a terrible tipster.
What about the Arabians this afternoon?
Do you know what? If I ride a winner, I will be delighted, because I think I haven't ridden a winner on the Arabian day yet. Hasn't
Briley Frost on all the good ones, isn't she?
I think so.
Yeah. Get Jim's laid. Heat. There's a joke, obviously. Heat this week. It has been very hot. It got up to 37 degrees, 38 degrees in the southeast on Thursday. We raced at Sandown, we raced at Newbury. Southall raced 5 races, called off the last 2. Generally speaking, Kitty, how well was the heat situation managed, do you think? There was a bit of BHA took a little bit of heat, no pun intended, for racing at Southall and then calling off the last 2.
I think everyone did the best job they could. I mean, no one could foresee how hot the temperature would get. I mean, obviously there were forecasts, but just I was watching on the screen at the office, and they were explaining all the pre-measures they had for everything for the horses. They had this shelter underneath so they could go in and cool off more efficiently. I'm not so sure about jump racing in the summer. That sounds controversial, but just whether horses are actually used to that heat and whether they can adapt to it that quickly. But I'm sure there's some scientific statistics out there that can sort of show us a bit more in that regard.
Yeah, I think there wasn't really an issue with the flat racing. I think Kitty raised an interesting point about jumping in high temperatures, Jim, and you've had experience of both.
Yeah, I'd agree with you to a certain extent. I think obviously the flat racing, they're racing for a minute to 2 minutes, and I think when you're going 3.5 miles with 11.5 stone on your back in extreme heat is not ideal. All the tracks were very good this week. I rode out of, as soon as you came in, you were at Newbury the other night. We didn't ride them into the winners' enclosure. We got off them immediately, walking down the chute, buckets of water straight over them. I think I've ridden in countries where are hotter, but the horses are used to it. And when you get a heat wave come straight in like this, the horses aren't used to it, and sometimes they can struggle a little bit.
Generally well managed, Lee, do you think, this week?
Yeah, I think it was very well managed. My greater concern wouldn't be so much racing the horses, it would be travelling the horses. You had Southwell that finished at 2 o'clock, 2:30, which in theory looks a very good idea, but when you have that, it meant that the horses would have been travelling in the very hottest part of the day, between 3 and 5, and that for me would be the bigger concern.
Okay, I don't think we're going to get that sort of heat replicated this summer, I don't think. We'll move on to the Curragh. And this week it was announced that Pat Keogh will take over as CEO of the Curragh, in addition to his role at Leopardstown, a man that we know well. Lee, and I think it's generally been well received, this appointment, that he will take responsibility for both tracks for the time being. That will help with Irish Champions weekend for sure. It
will. It's just about the first bit of good news the Curragh's received in a long time in terms of PR. For years now, the Curragh has been a really troubled racecourse in terms of how it's perceived by the public and by the wider sport. For years, people said the Curragh's facilities were terrible, which they were for a major racecourse, and it got criticised for that. Then the Curragh was criticised for continuing to race while in a period of major redevelopment, when perhaps the Irish Derby should have gone to Leopardstown, so there's criticism there. And then the Curragh has reopened. I've got to say, I've not been there yet, but the facilities sound spectacular. But the Curragh has been criticised for how those facilities treat general racegoers relative to racing professionals and those who can afford to pay the most. So in bringing in Pat Keogh to replace a chief executive who has left in pretty rapid circumstances and is now on gardening leave, seems like a very good idea. He's a good operator. He has a big job to do, particularly when you look at Irish Oaks Day, had an attendance of only just over 4,000 people, which seems, and almost certainly is, pitiful.
Kitty?
Yeah, I'd agree with Lee. I mean, something needs to happen. I think Pat's a good man to sort of take the step up. Just the crowd attendances, that's a worry, and that's something that needs addressing. Just 4,000. I mean, if you compare that to King George Day at Ascot, obviously different tracks, but it's just a concern.
It also reflects the fact as well that despite having the most powerful racing and breeding operations in the world of horse racing, Ireland is not a country that is particularly interested in flat racing. It's a jump racing nation, and flat racing continues to struggle there.
Which is quite extraordinary when you think about its status as a power base.
Absolutely.
And where do all these great thoroughbreds come from in the main as well. Nigel Adams is the new sports minister, taking over from Mims Davis. His tenure was brief, but we've got a new government, and therefore there's been, well, it's not a reshuffle, there was a night of the long knives. And Nigel Adams is the man who's come in as Minister for Sport. Now, a senior Labour MP who is a big racing supporter has contacted me this week to say that he feels that this is good news for racing. So that, for me, will do. If a member of the opposition benches thinks that Nigel Adams is a good appointment for racing, then let's hope that's the case. But there have been several appointments in the new government, Lee, that could be good for racing, but at least there are racing-friendly people around.
Yeah, it's certainly a government, and it's actually a cabinet now as well, that has an awful lot of racing fans and people in there with an interest in racing. The sports minister, the new sports minister, the third new sports minister in 9 months, isn't someone I know or knew much of, but Nick Rust welcomed his appointment, spoken with someone with a real interest in horse racing. Matt Hancock, who of course stood briefly for the Conservative leadership, is still there as the Health Secretary and a big fan of Boris Johnson.
Yeah, he's a huge fan of Boris Johnson. He was such a huge fan, he just about managed to keep the same job.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got Priti Patel in the Home Office. Not an entirely uncontroversial figure herself, but someone who has a big interest in horse racing. You've got Rishi Sunak who represents the constituency that includes Midland in the cabinet. So you've got the guys who have Midland and Newmarket as their constituencies in the cabinet. You've got racing fans in the cabinet as well, which must be a good thing, particularly when you balance that by the fact that in his great address, I say great address in terms of its length, in Downing Street, Boris Johnson spoke of the importance of animal welfare to his government. And that was it wasn't the sort of thing you would expect to hear a new Prime Minister saying in his first major address.
It
which
ticked
Nick
the possible vote winner box, didn't it?
And we have to bear in mind that with horse racing and with the way this government and the previous government adapted their approach to gambling, that tick the vote box is something that will be constantly on their minds.
Next and final point, an announcement this week of the Saudi Cup, now going to be the world's most valuable horse race, in the same sort of congested space for these big dirt races as the Pegasus World Cup in Florida and the Dubai World Cup. So it sits in between the two of them. Can this be a major part of the international racing stage in that part of the year?
They will offer the money. The money's clearly there. It's a project that seems to have taken a while to come to fruition. It's in quite a heavily populated part of the year, in the sense that you've got the Pegasus World Cup and the Dubai World Cup and now this contest. You can argue that in terms of European participation from our part of the world, even Dubai struggles to get the very best horses because it's a long year and they're campaigned increasingly with the autumn in mind. So Americans will be interested in it. It's not something that excites me, and it's not something that I will be rushing to attend, but it's an interesting addition to the calendar.
Especially given that it clashes with that 3-mile chase at Kempton on the same...
would hold far greater interest
on the same weekend that used to be called the Racing Post Chase. Kitty, is it something that you're interested in?
It's an interesting idea. I mean, as Lee said, whether it will attract a huge number of Irish and sort of English competitors, that's another question. But it could set up like a nice bonus if someone went from the Pegasus to Riyadh and then the Dubai World Cup. But
yeah, you wouldn't mind owning a horse who could win all three, would you?
Yeah, you'd be pretty well off. But I'm just not sure about the timing and sort of just for European challenges at this stage.
Jim, have you ridden the dirt track in Riyadh?
No, I've never been there actually. No.
What's your sort of feel about another race to add to the sort of international program?
I'm not sure it's necessarily really needed, but if you put the money on, I'm sure people will come. But like I said, you've got the Dubai World Cup and the Pegasus World Cup. I'm not sure how many Europeans presence will be felt there really.
But if the phone rings for Jay Crowley,
I'll be there.
£20 million purse or dollar purse, he'll be there. Those were this week's talking points. So in a few moments I'll be chatting with Richard Hannon, but my thanks to Kitty for coming in. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Not at all, and good luck on Thursday, and I hope it's everything you hope it will be.
Oh, thank you. I'm looking forward to it. So yeah.
And how can we donate?
So there's a Just Giving page. It's under the Magnolia Cup branch, and there's several different riders, and I'm underneath Kitty Trice.
There we are.
And I've put it on my Twitter byline as well.
Fantastic. Well, good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in. And Kitty's video diary is available on racingpost.com and is all in the paper today as well, and it's an excellent read. Lee and Jim will be rejoining me a little bit later in the programme. Richard Hannon coming right up.
Luck on Sunday, proudly sponsored by Al Basti Equiworld Dubai.
Have you just started in racing? Got a few questions? Don't worry, because I am here to help. If you don't know me, I am Matty Batchelor, and I've been in racing all my life and understand that it's not always easy to know where to go or what to do. But don't panic. There's loads of support for you, and over the next couple of minutes, I'll be there showing you which way to turn. First of all, when you start your job in a racing yard, your employer will have had registered you on the Stable Employee Register. This is how the industry knows that you're working in racing. Now that you're in racing, you will be sent a racehorse attendance ID card. often known as a stable pass. This allows you entry to the racecourse when you're taking your horse racing. But now you're employed by racing, you are bound by the rules of racing. So for more info on this, please visit the BHA website. When your employer did your induction and put you on the stable employee register, they may have told you all about racinggroom.com. It's an incredible, useful hub designed just for you. As soon as you sign up, you'll be able to access the latest industry news, offers, training opportunities, and much more. Sign up now. So what are the benefits of working in racing? Well, you have a proper contract of employment, a paid holiday, a pension, and an accident insurance policy called REABS, which will even pay you if you have to take time off because of an injury. You'll get an agreed minimum wage structure, and you'll also get your share of the prize fund that the horses will win in your yard. This is sometimes called pool money. And let's not forget, you get to spend a lot of time with these guys. In racing, there are so many associations set up to help you. You will automatically be a part of the National Association of Racing Staff. Whoa. It's your trade union, and they have a great app you can use to check your pay and employment benefits. You also need to know about racing welfare. You can find their offices up and down the country. They're there to support everyone in racing, whether you have questions about your career, where you live, your finances, or an injury, or anything else. They are the guys to point you in the right direction. You can chat to a racing welfare officer or via their support line, 24/7. And of course, your journey has just started in racing. There are plenty of opportunities to develop your skills in riding and handling racehorses, with training available at the racing schools and as well as regional training available directly to your yard. You can find out about courses, other types of roles in racing and jobs by visiting careersinracing.com. And there's even something called CATS, a careers advice and training service, to help you plan your career path in racing. Chat to your racing welfare officer about that too. My final bit of advice to you would be learn everything you can from everyone you meet and grab every opportunity. This is the greatest job in the world and you're going to have a great journey. Good luck.
Luck on Sunday, proudly sponsored by Al Basti Equiworld Dubai.
Welcome back. You're watching Luck on Sunday. My special guest this week is master of one of the most important training establishments in the United Kingdom, and indeed in what has only been a relatively brief career, he's already set records. He was champion trainer in his first season with a licence in 2014. He has already trained classic winners and he is marching towards an impressive total again this year. Fastest trainer in history to 1,000 winners. He took over from his father less than a decade ago. He is, of course, Richard Hannon. Richard, great to welcome you to Luck on Sunday for the first time.
Morning, Nick. Thank you very much.
It's taken me a little while.
A few near misses. I've had people get married for the last 3 weekends in a row. Someone said to me today, "You've got another sibling getting married." Not this weekend, so I'm here.
You are one of
six
siblings.
All of them married now, some of them twice.
And was it always predestined in essence that you would be sitting there and the licence holder from an early age, or well, not so much?
I didn't really get into it until I learned to ride, which was pretty late, probably 11 or 12, and loved it. And I started going racing with my dad and meeting people, and all of a sudden it became a bit of a, it's not a club, but it's a bit of a society. I was going racing from when I was very, very young, all summer. I loved it, got to know a lot of people, and that's how I got into it. And then obviously my mum made me go to university because my A-levels were good enough. I think we were all shocked. But then I went away to Canada and Australia and worked for Dad ever since, really. No one else would have me.
What did you read at university?
Yeah, I knew. I did exercise physiology and geography.
Exercise physiology and geography? That's an unusual combination.
Okay, it's sports science. It's what it was. But it did have a physiology sort of bit to it. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed university. Not as much as I should have done. What I probably did was get fat and get a student loan and get into debt, and had to start working at some time.
And was there any part point during that time that you thought, well, actually, I could go and do something else? There is a wider world out here. Or was the racing so seductive?
There was, there wasn't a wider world. That was the world I was in, and that was the way I wanted to go. And now you look back and you think, why didn't I spend a year working in a pub or working in the city? And I've got a lot of friends that work in the city, and I think I'd have loved it. It's probably quite a similar business, and I regret in some ways not doing it. And I see some, people that have gone into racing early, a lot of them trainers' sons, and they've done the same as me. And you won't change them at that age either. But when you get a little bit older, you realise that there is a bigger world out there, and probably should have experienced it while I could. But I don't regret it to a point where I'm angry about it.
No.
But I can look at it, and in terms of my children, I'd love them to go off and see more things.
And even at this early stage, can you sort of see what directions they might be headed?
Well, Eliza loves riding. She's only 7.
Yeah.
She might want to go into it. And Jack, he doesn't like riding so much, but it's easier than walking. And he has a bit of a, he's a temperament, and he's quite a funny little guy. And I'd encourage them, and I'd back them up in whatever they wanted to do. And if they wanted to come into racing, fantastic.
Did you enjoy the riding side of it?
I did. I loved it. I wasn't very good. I had a few rides as an amateur, one of them around Goodwood, funnily enough. And I did enjoy it.
And how was that? How was the experience of riding around Goodwood? Now you've trained so many winners there.
Well, I think you get pretty early, you realise that it's not as easy as it looks, and you have a new respect for people that have ridden in races and how hard it is. And you see people criticising that have never ridden, and because it looks easy, it's not. It's very different. When you're in your racing kit, as Jim Crowley would tell you, your breeches, your saddle, it feels like you've never ridden before. It's hard.
And in terms of your attitude towards jockeys, has that made it different?
A lot of time growing up with him, and it's difficult for them, but they find it very natural, and they're all very good at it. In terms of my attitude to them, is they have a job to do, a job which fit, healthy, and once they get on, that's their job.
And a lot of those jockeys are, they're experienced, they're shrewd, they've been in the game a long time. Richard Hughes being the obvious example. And I guess you must have learnt a lot of him when you were coming up together, essentially.
Exactly. I was travelling to the races with them a lot, and so you get to hear the idle chit-chat, the jokes, the sport, the seriousness, the dangers. And and a lot of them, if they're good, they do get to be experienced. A lot of them have burnout, and that's something they have to deal with.
Am I right in thinking that you've made the mistake of playing cards with the late, great Pat Eddery once?
Yeah. My dad sent me home with him one day from York, and he gave me 100 quid. I thought, oof, that'll do. He said, I want to play cards with you on the way back. I was only 15, and so I sat down playing cards, won the first 2 hands, making money, and next thing I lost it all.